A wise man plants a tree that he knows he will not stand in the shade of. Like many Stockton students, Rachel went to a party in Atlantic City over the summer.
I'm a senior at Stockton University. In March of 2015, I became a victim of sexual assault.
Sexual assault is actually a piece of domestic violence and dating violence at times, but it doesn't have to be. Sexual assault is when one person is forced to engage in a sexual act and they did not receive consent, or they could not receive consent by the victim because they were intoxicated or passed out.
I would define sexual assault as any unwanted physical contact, either of or by the victim, being forced into doing something that you don't want to do.
I would define sexual assault as any form of contact sexually that the other person does not want.
I was hanging out with a group of friends and a couple acquaintances, mutual friends, if you will. One of the acquaintances, we'll call him Todd, decided to start saying things to me. I started fighting with this individual, and he was getting angry because I was actually strong enough to kind of fight him off in the play fighting that we were doing, supposedly. So then we actually started fighting, and I was, me and him were going back and forth, and then eventually he pushed me down onto the ground, and then he started kneeling on my back, and he took his arm and he put it around my throat, and he was choking me. And he told me I couldn't get up until I called him daddy, and then I told him, I said, I'm not going to do that. I can't. I would not do it until I started to black out, and I couldn't breathe. And I told him I couldn't breathe. And he said, he was like, you know what to do. So I called him daddy. And then he finally got off of me, and he was laughing. And one of our other friends was cheering him on in the background, saying, like, it's fine, she can take it, go ahead, keep going, it's fine. He kind of took me behind the corner, a little bit out of sight, and then he forced his fingers into my vagina and kind of hoisted me up, and then he slipped his hand under my dress and he felt me up. And then it was at that point, I tried to struggle, I tried to get away. And then I decided finally I was going to knee him. So I kneed him in the stomach, and then he punched me in the face.
So I was involved with the Not on My Campus campaign, which basically just asked students to take a picture with Not on My Campus on their palm. And by taking that picture, you're pledging to intervene in sexual assault. So it's not just being a bystander. If you see something, say something. To raise awareness for sexual assault and be an active fighter. And to not commit sexual assault. And then, so that was a huge campaign, and it really got people talking, which is really exciting. And then the other way that I'm part of it is on the It's On Us campaign, which is going to happen in April, which is titled It's On Stockton, and it's a month to raise sexual assault awareness. And my goal with that is to coordinate all the events that are going on campus, like the Slut Walk, or Kappa Sigma and Delta Zeta screen, the hunting ground. So coordinating all those events together to maximize attendance.
My first two guests are civil rights activists featured in a documentary about sexual assault on campus called The Hunting Ground. It's in theaters now and premieres on CNN this fall. Let's just start off by asking, why did you call it The Hunting Ground?
Yeah, so we weren't the only ones that had an opinion in this, but I think a very clear theme within the whole documentary is the fact that it's not just a mistake. It's not just sex gone wrong. You have these.
You're talking about sexual assault on campus.
Yeah, exactly. Rape is definitely a premeditated crime.
5% of sexual assaults are actually reported. So if you look at numbers and you look at college statistics, it's going to say that sexual assault barely happens. But the thing is that there are people who say, you were drunk, you couldn't, it wasn't rape, you just don't remember it. That's why people aren't reporting it, and that's why sexual assault is the most underrated crime out of them all.
I know there's the statistic out that it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5 women. I don't feel like it happens a lot here at Stockton, but I really don't know.
There's a lot of statistics out there. Generally, it's about 1 in 4, 20 to 25% of students on college campuses have been a part of a violent act, dating violence, domestic violence, sexual assault.
A new survey of college students, one of the largest ever on sexual assault and sexual misconduct, finds that nearly 1 in 4, 23%, say they experienced some form of unwanted sexual contact on campus.
But I'm going to guess that that's really underreported. And we're actually finding out the numbers that are being reported are higher this year than, say, last year because of our new Title IX initiatives and coordination effects.
According to the Department of Education, Title IX's definition, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. At Stockton University, there is a mandatory Title IX overview seminar at the Welcome Week event for all new incoming students. Soon, all Stockton students will have a working knowledge of Title IX and consent training.
And I knew that the kid Todd had been doing drugs earlier, so I don't know if for a fact if that's what they went to do, but all I know is they all left finally. And I was screaming, like running around the room. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I kept threatening. I'm like, if he comes back into the room, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna stab him. I was freaking out. And then while I was in the shower, I looked over all the bruises and the scratches and all the marks all over me. And finally I came out and I told them the story. And I was still shaking, like I was like convulsing furiously. My face was red. I couldn't be calmed down at that point in time. So I basically just sat in my fury and I cried myself to sleep that night. I told another one of my friends and she told me to call the sexual assault hotline, which I did, and I told them my story and they told me too. They said, you know, it's their story against yours, and because it was 2 against 1 and my other friend didn't even realize what was happening. I didn't call the police. I didn't contact the authorities. I just called the crisis hotline. And they said if I did want to call the police, that they would have the record of it, so I could at least recount the events, you know, date, time, so that way things didn't get confused as time passed. But I ended up not doing so because it seemed that everyone advised me not to.
Cases often go unreported because of a variety of reasons. A couple that I think of right off the top would be fear of retaliation. I mean, we're a small campus community, and if you've been, say, raped or abused by someone who also lives in this community, you're going to see him or her walking around, and so there's an added fear to that.
I think it's because it's easier for us to believe that a rapist is some kind of monster instead of a colleague or a neighbor or a coworker, somebody who's perceived as normal. And the rape myths are so thrown throughout society. You see them in movies, on TV shows all the time. So it becomes easier to relate to that as opposed to what statistics and facts will tell us is more common cases of sexual assault.
The other piece is, aside from retaliation, we're looking at issues related to guilt and blaming that the victim places upon themselves, especially in sexual assault cases. For example, consent. If someone goes to a party and drinks a lot of alcohol and they become intoxicated and they cannot consent, or they pass out and they're raped, sometimes they're going to blame themselves that I let this happen, it's all my fault. And we know that's not the case. And if they come into the center, we can work with them to help alleviate that fear and that blame. But when it's unreported and we don't know about it, you know, I worry about the students that are out there just blaming themselves for being victimized.
I didn't think... Sorry?
No, it's all right. Rachel, I'm sorry. Rachel.
didn't think what happened to me was that bad. So I didn't think I deserved help when it happened, especially because, I mean, I had a few people who supported me, but majority of the people did not support me. So I just felt part of it was my fault. And I kept telling myself it wasn't my fault. And I just thought of all those women, like all of the horrible things that have happened to other people, and that, like, they didn't have control over. And I could have walked away. Or, you know, I thought I could have. So I felt like if I had reported it, I felt like that would have been selfish of me. So, I don't know. I know I know now, like, that's kind of screwy, but there's still part of me that feels that, like, that I didn't deserve to be helped. So, I don't know if my view has changed. All I know is that what happened to me affects me every single day. Like, I think about it all the time. There's not a day that goes by where I don't think about what happened. I don't think about how I felt or what I let him do to me or how I didn't report it or any of that. I've had people give me hugs, and just because they're giving me a hug from behind, I freak out. Because I automatically go back to when he was choking me. And then I've had to apologize to people. I'm like, I'm sorry. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but I can't help it. I just get these flashbacks, and then... So, I don't know how my outlook is. I just know I don't want that to happen to anybody else. And I've always viewed myself as a strong person. But I think if I should have been strong enough to do something about it. To actually try to get, you know, at least it recognized on some sort of record. So if, God forbid, he does this to somebody else, you know, there's someone to back her up if it ever happens. And that's really my biggest regret.
I was also amazed that so many of the women in your movie said, as horrible as the rape was, what was worse was how I was treated after.
Absolutely. I think you hear that across the country. And, you know, that institutional betrayal, you go to your school, that the police, whomever you go to that is supposed to protect you, and then they betray you after something has, you know, as awful as sexual assault has happened. Yeah, it's worse. It's re-traumatizing. And for me, it was worse.
This issue, like many others, gains important insight through a quote from Martin Luther King. In the end, what will hurt the most is not the words of enemies, but the silence of our friends.
I really believe that Stockton University is a great response when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault, stalking, and bullying issues. We have been working with victims since our inception.
My advice is if you feel comfortable, talk to someone. You don't have to report it, but talk to someone, to see a counselor, because these issues can have long-lasting effects. And people who are victims of sexual assault, the statistic is are 12 times more likely to commit suicide or attempt suicide than a woman who's not a victim of any crime. So just by speaking to someone, you know, Stockton has a great department here, great counseling department here.
As much as it sucks to have to talk about it or have people judge you or to have all of these other things that happen, you know, you have to be strong enough because there are people out there who want to help you. And I wish that I had reached out to more people. And I still actually have to reach out to some people.
The president, President Kesselman, he actually wrote his dissertation on violence against women. when he received his doctoral degree. And that vision of his, that violence against women should not be tolerated, is something that is living and breathing in every cell on our college campus.
I've made some really bad decisions since then, and I didn't realize what I was doing, like why, what the root cause of it was. So if my advice to them, if something ever happens to you, you need to acknowledge it, you need to get help, you need to reach out to people. And as far as prevention goes, not that anybody would ever ask for it, but you have to be aware of your surroundings. I had a gut feeling that night, not that I shouldn't have even been where I was. I don't know what told me, but even my mom, she said, "Rachel, I don't think you should go. Don't go." And we didn't know why, and now we know why. So trust your gut instinct. If something seems wrong, it's wrong. You need to trust yourself. And that's my advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
From the view of one campus, ideas can spread. We plant a small tree of discussion and dialogue. Future generations will stand in the shade of true change.